Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another event by the Taub Center for Israel Studies, this time co-sponsored with the Bronfman Center and the Tamid organization. With remarkable punctuality on our part, we welcome the always punctual member of Knesset, Tzipi Livni. Tzipi Livni is the co-leader of the Zionist Union Party. She was a former Minister of Foreign Affairs in Israel. She's held a variety of ministerial positions in the Israeli government, including Foreign Affairs. She's been acting Prime Minister, Minister of Justice, head of the Israeli team in the peace process negotiations with the Palestinians in 2008 and 2013. She served as a member of the National Security Cabinet and the Senior Security Cabinet during the Second Lebanon War, Operation Cast Lead, and Operation Protective Edge. Have I left anything else? Did I leave anything else? Okay. She is currently...
By the way, I held about 7 different positions in the Israeli government, but it's not about because I'm that talented, but because of the system of selection in Israel.
Oh, we can argue about that. That's all right. Okay. Livni is currently head of the Tnu'ah party and, as I said, co-leader of the Zionist Union, which currently leads the opposition. She's also a member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, head of the Subcommittee for International Legal Warfare, and engages in issues of asymmetrical warfare and Israel's national security. In other words, she's at the heart of things in Israel and in Israeli political and security affairs, and is very well qualified to talk to us today on the subject of Israel and the changing Middle East. Just before I invite our speaker to the podium, can I ask you all to turn off cell phones, or at least to silence cell phones? At the end of Mrs. Livni's address, she will take questions. In order to better manage the questions, we've decided to ask you to write the questions on cards, which will be available in the course of the talk. People will be around, administrators will be walking around with the cards. We'll collect them all in order to avoid long speeches and duplicate questions. I'll read out the cards, and Tzipi Livni will decide which and how to answer them. With that, I invite our speaker to address us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here to speak about the free world, about the Middle East, and about Israel. And I know that when we say the word Israel, nobody is indifferent. For some, Israel is the miracle of the Middle East, the Jewish state, the homeland of the Jewish people, startup nation. For others, it's the occupier who controls the Palestinian life. Now, I didn't come here in order not to have criticism on Israel. I don't ask the world never to turn a blind eye to the situation in the region or not to criticize Israel. But I'm here to give an answer to questions, also difficult questions, but I would like to speak to you and to share with you what is my Israel and what is the way I see Israel and its future and its values. Now, not everything is good, but not everything is bad. And what I'm doing in politics is trying to improve things that I believe that can be better. And the truth is that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. It is a startup nation. And it is true also that we have this ongoing conflict with the Palestinians for so many years. The reason for me to be in politics is because I believe that it is solvable. I believe that we need to take all the efforts and to try and solve this conflict, not as a favor to the Palestinians or not even as a favor to the President of the United States, but I believe that this is part of the interest or the basic interest of the State of Israel. But in order to address the conflict, in order to understand what Israel is, I believe that we need at first to speak about some facts. And firstly, and the most important one, is to address those saying that the creation of the State of Israel created this conflict with the Palestinians, which is not true. The State of Israel was established in order to give an end to an existing conflict that was in this tiny place between Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea. The idea or the solution of two states for two peoples was created, adapted, and agreed, and was transformed into a United Nations resolution in 1947. And the State of Israel was established in accordance to this international decision, stated that this place between Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea would be divided into a Jewish state and an Arab state. Nobody spoke those days about a Palestinian people. They were talking about Arabs and about an Arab state. More than that, Israel, or the Jewish leadership, accepted the idea of dividing the land and creation of two states when the Arabs, their leadership, plus the Arab state, were not willing to accept the idea of two states for two peoples. For me, this is the solution also today. But it's very important to understand that not the creation of the State of Israel created the conflict, but the idea of two states that was embraced by the entire international community is the way to end an ongoing conflict that started long before the State of Israel was established. This is one fact. Another fact, as the State of Israel didn't create the conflict, the existence of the State of Israel is not the reason for international terror or for the Islamic terror that we all face today. And in order to understand that, let's, take it ourselves and look at the region from a bird point of view, a bird eye. And there's a religious conflict, religious war outside there. It's not the Muslims against the others. It's part of, or it's the extremists, Islamists, terrorists, radical movement and groups that are fighting against all the others, against Muslims, against Jews, against Christians. For them, it's not about what we do, it's about who we are. And it's important to say, even though for some it's not politically correct to say that this is a religious conflict, because we need to understand that when this is the conflict, there is nothing we can do in order to solve it. There is nothing we can give them to appease them, to sign an agreement with them that they would stop or change their horrific ideology. We all remember September 11. We all see these pictures of cutting heads off, and they are doing this because they are not willing to accept the right of others, including us here in this room, to think differently, to express our religion in a different manner. And it's not important whether we are Jews, Christians, or Muslims. And therefore, it's important to understand that if we end the conflict with the Palestinians tomorrow morning, hopefully we do, Iran will not change its ideology. Daesh would not decide to stop cutting heads off, because for them the conflict is just something to abuse in order to create more and more hate among the public in the Arab and Muslim states. They are not trying to solve the conflict, they are using it, they are abusing it, exploiting it in order to get more and more support. This terror doesn't affect only the Middle East. It is changing the world, and we need to understand it. What we see now is this kind of hatred that we used to see, humanity, maybe thousands of years ago, but they spread this hatred to new technology, to the social media. And therefore, what they create is fear all over the world. It's not just in the Middle East. These refugees that left the Middle East and come to Europe are changing the nature of Europe. No, I'm not blaming the refugees. But what's happening in Europe is this fear is leading to xenophobia, to hatred of minority. And we see more and more in politics, more and more extremism. And in a way, those that expresses our values, the values that we are fighting for, the values that these groups are fighting against, these values are changing. And we see it in Europe, we see it elsewhere. And I don't want to refer, trust me, to the elections in the United States. And therefore, I believe that what needs to be done, and this is what I'm speaking about, is something like, moderates of the world unite. And when I speak about moderates of the world, it's about states, but also about political leadership that you can find in any place and in every state that are facing this changing amongst their societies, and it's more difficult for them to stand, to speak up, to fight for these values when what they face is this fear, hatred that is changing the nature of different states in the world. Now, as I said before, these groups are not just against Jews or Christians, they are against other Muslims because they are more moderate, because they are not expressing religious the way they believe it should be expressed. And therefore, for the first time, maybe, Israel and other Arab and Muslim states have the same interest, the same threat. Iran, Daesh, ISIS is a threat to Israel, and it is also a threat to other Arab and Islamic and Muslim states in the region. So the obvious is, or should be, that Israel, the free world, and these moderate Arab states would unite and create one camp, one front, against all these lunatics in the region. The problem is that we have a glass ceiling, and the glass ceiling is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Because those leaders in the Arab world, they understand that Israel is not the enemy anymore, okay? We have the conflict, but it's not the enemy. Iran threatens them, Daesh threatens them, but because of the public opinion that sees Israel as the Satan, they cannot do something publicly with Israeli leaders because they would be accused of being traitors or abandoning the Palestinian cause. And therefore, solving the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians can help in creating, or it can help in changing the strategic situation of Israel in the Middle East. Now, I'm not talking about peace just around the corner. And frankly, I'm not thinking about peace like in a romantic manner. And the moment in which we sign an agreement, we would not live happily ever after. It's a tough neighborhood. There's a need for more time in order to change the realities on the ground and minds of people and everything. But by taking some steps towards the Palestinians, we can grab the opportunity that it's now on the table. When these Arab and Muslim states are coming to Israel saying, let's work together, but show that you are serious, that when you say two states for two peoples, you mean it. This is an opportunity that we shouldn't miss and we should grab. And what I say to Israel is not just let's be united against those that are against us. This is the obvious as a nation. When we have enemies, we are united. What I say to Israel is let's stick together and let's be united and fight for a vision. So let's speak for a while about the vision of the State of Israel. And for me, the vision of the State of Israel is the identity of the State of Israel. And Israel was established as a Jewish democratic state. I said before that in accordance to Resolution 1 of the United Nations, it is a Jewish state, but it is also part of the historical, judicial, biblical, moral rights that we have as people for self-determination in a state of our own in the ancient land of the forefathers. And the land of Israel is the ancient land of our forefathers. And Israel is a democracy because this was the choice when the state of Israel was established. This is part of the scroll of independence that created Israel, which is, for now, the constitution of the state of Israel. But what does it mean, a Jewish democratic state? I mean, there are lots of democracies in the world. I mean, we are in the great democracy. But what is a Jewish state? There is just one, Israel. And we need to define first and foremost for us, not for the world, what does it mean? And I believe that being a Jewish state, it's not a matter of religion, it's a national issue. And therefore I believe that the Jewishness of the state of Israel is not a monopoly of ultra-Orthodox parties, political parties in Israel. I believe that it's a matter of values, it's a matter of history, it's a matter of culture, but it is also a matter of values. And therefore, equal rights to minorities is part of the values of Judaism. We say, "Ve'ahavta et hager," I love the stranger, the foreigner. Well, it's not the exact translation, but we can live with it. And therefore, equal rights for minority is not a favor that Israel as a Jewish state is doing to Israel as a democracy. It's the same values. It comes from different sources, as I believe that democracy is not just system of election. Democracy is also a matter of values. So equal rights to minorities is part of being a Jewish and democratic state. And therefore, if I take these two words, Jewish democratic state, and turn it into one sentence, I believe that the sentence that describes the state of Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people with equal rights to all its citizens. And I believe that these values of the state of Israel as a Jewish democratic state live in harmony. And our responsibility as leaders is to keep them living in harmony and to prevent any clash or contradiction between these values. And I believe that in the future nobody should choose between being a democracy or being a Jewish state. And I believe and I know that when I'm being asked by others, what does it mean, a Jewish state? And when I say the entire sentence, a nation state of the Jewish people with equal rights to all its citizens, well, at once I see people say, okay, it is understood. And this is a moment in which those trying to say that this is racism, that this is, I don't know, all these stories that for decades they tried to invent, and since the state of Israel was established, they were those trying to say that this is racism. No, it's not. This is the right of a people for self-determination in the state of his own. But the only way to keep these values of Israel living in harmony is microphone, okay? The only way to keep the values of Israel living in harmony, there is one condition, and this is the Jewish majority. I mean, in a moment in which we would find a situation in which we are Jewish minority in Israel, we would face the clash between Israel and Jewish and democratic state. Because democracy is a matter of values, of respecting minorities, but the nature of a state with an Arab majority would be an Arab state. And this is the end of Zionism. And therefore, when I'm speaking about two states for two people, as I said before, it's not a favor to the Palestinian, not to the Arab world, not the way to appease the Arab world, not the way to keep the good relations with any president of the United States. It's our major interest and the only way to keep the values of Israel living in harmony. And therefore, when an American president says 2 states for 2 peoples, is not an anti-Israeli president. And not everything is a zero-sum game. And those supporting peace based on 2 states for 2 peoples can be pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian, as long as they are doing it in a way that represent these words. What does it mean? I insist in speaking in terms of 2 states for 2 peoples. Now, there are those that are speaking in shortcuts. 2 states, 2 states, 2 states. Why I insist on saying 2 states for 2 peoples or 2 nation states? Because during the years, the idea of 2 states for 2 people changed into 2 states. And why this is important? Because what does it mean, 2 states for 2 peoples? It means that each state gives an answer to national aspiration of different people. Israel to the Jewish people, and the Palestinian state, the future Palestinian state, to the Palestinians. As Israel gave refuge to Jews who needed to leave Europe after the Holocaust, to Jews who needed to leave Arab states, and we embraced them, and those who left former Soviet Union, and those who left Ethiopia. And Israel is the home for Jews who are here in this room, living in the United States, equal rights citizens, of course, in the United States of America, but yet they have Israel as their second home, not just as a safe shelter, but as a state that represents also their national identity. Therefore, the creation of the Palestinian state is the answer for the Palestinians, wherever they are. Those who live in the territory, in Gaza and Yehuda v'Shomron. Those who live in refugee camps, being kept as political cards, waiting for something that would not happen in accordance to the idea of 2 states for 2 peoples, because Israel is not their nation state. And also, the meaning is that this is the nation state of the Israeli Arabs, the Palestinians, who are equal rights Israeli citizens. But yet, this is the end of national aspiration inside the state of Israel, within its borders. This is the concept. Now, I share this concept with the international community. I convinced Condi Rice, who later convinced President Bush, to give us a letter saying that the establishment of the Palestinian state is the answer for the refugees, Palestinian refugees. Because he said, this is your vision, 2 states for 2 people? Because otherwise, there would not be an end to the conflict. 2 states with this ongoing issue of refugees would create another conflict that would be between 2 states, not between 2 national movements, not between a state and an authority, but within 2 states. So what did we do? Now the Palestinians understood it. And therefore, what they say now is just 2 states. And it's very important for us to insist on this, because otherwise there is no end to the conflict. And the answer that I give to those saying, okay, but you have your state of your own, so create another state. I said, the Palestinians are leaning on the fact, or are basing their demand for a state, because Israel exists as a nation state of the Jewish people. What's the use of dividing the land? Giving up places that we are connected to historically, just to have another state? And if they are not a people, Palestinians, who deserve a state of their own, what's the use of creating and establishing another state? So this is one issue which is very important to keep while speaking about the future and ending the conflict. Another one, of course, is security. Now, any agreement is risky. As I said before, it's not going to be a fairy tale. And therefore, the Palestinian state is going to be a demilitarized state. But you know, the Palestinians agree to it. I negotiated with the Palestinians, and after long discussion about it, they understood that the only way to create a Palestinian state is by accepting the idea that the Palestinian state would be demilitarized. Another issue is settlement activities. Now, it's not important what each and every one of you is thinking about settlements, whether it is part of the Jewish people coming back to the land of our forefathers, or whether it was an historical stupid mistake against the international law. It's not important for now. The most important thing that we would understand that during these 50 years, most of the Israelis who live in settlements are living in what we call blocks of settlements. These are civil population centers that are very close to the line of 67. And therefore, in an agreement, we can draw the line and the border of Israel by annexing these blocks of settlement to be part of Israel and give the Palestinian compensation by after doing so. This was also accepted by President Bush. This was accepted as a concept by the Palestinians and the Arabs. In the Arab Peace Initiative, they say 67 line. They added in the last few years with adjustment, with swaps. The meaning is that we cannot just, rewind the clock and go back to 67. We need to accept some changes on the ground, regardless to the question why they happen. Frankly, they happened because in 67 we thought that we are going to live in one state with equal rights and giving also identity cards to all these millions of Palestinians that are living there. I don't want to do it. But we need to understand that when time passes by, there is an erosion on the basic concept and interest of Israel. Just a short story. My father was member of parliament from Likud, and he was a member in the defense committee in the parliament for many years. And now, excuse me for sharing all these details, but I'm renovating my home, so I took, find all old papers because I need to clean the house once in a while. So I found a box with papers that my father left. He died in 1991. And I checked all the papers. So I found a letter. Dear Menachem, sincerely Ron. The date is 82. I read the paper. It's a letter that Ronald Reagan, wrote to Menachem Begin. And he said, listen, this is an opportunity to start negotiations with the PLO. And I give you the parameters that I believe, as an American president, should be the end game. He was not speaking about a Palestinian state. He was talking about land for peace, but not to create a new state. He said that the Palestinians who live in Jerusalem, we are talking now about 200,000 people, would not vote in Israel. Now they can vote to the municipality of Jerusalem. No settlements would be evacuated, but he asked for complete freeze of settlements. Begin said no, and now I think that every Israeli would grab this offer. No Palestinian state, no evacuation of settlement, just stop building new settlements. And what's happening during all these years, that every plan that is in the table, if we would not, well, of course we need, while negotiating, keep our interest, but there is an erosion. Things that were obvious few years ago are not obvious now. And when the Palestinians are going state after state after state, are getting declarations in favor of a Palestinian state, it's not just a Palestinian state. It's a Palestinian state, 67 line, Jerusalem its capital. So we are losing even before entering the negotiation room. And therefore I believe that the interest of Israel is to relaunch negotiation. And I do believe that building or continuing settlements activities doesn't serve the interest of Israel. Trust me, I can explain Israel's security. I can have the support of the entire international community in our security needs. But when it comes to settlement, I can't. If there is a magician here or in Israel that can explain how an isolated settlement helps Israel's security, I wish he can call me. We need to understand that settlement activity belongs to another vision of greater Israel. That's it. It's legitimate. But it's not my vision. And it's not the vision that even Prime Minister Netanyahu is speaking about. So let's be honest, firstly with ourselves. We need, to put, and I believe that this is what we need to do. There's a gap between what Israel is, between our values and between the image of Israel outside of Israel. And in order to bridge this gap, it's not just a better PR. It's a better policy. And at first, before explaining to others, let's decide for ourselves, what is the direction? What is the direction, the destination in our national GPS? Because when I leave home, go somewhere, I put in the GPS the address. And when there are traffic jams, I'm looking for another road. But I know where I'm heading, where I'm going. In Israel, some are going to Greater Israel and others are going to two states. Let's make a decision. And then let's be united for a vision. Now, the BDS movement is exploiting the situation and the ignorance. Because I'm sure that if we would ask somebody, I'm talking about the US, not Europe, and if I would ask somebody in the street about Israel and Palestine, I'm sure that they would say that a Palestinian state existed before, and Israel occupies it. Nobody knows that there was no Palestinian state in the past, and that Gaza Strip and the West Bank were not connected. And we are trying to create new reality. And there is something which is very important to understand about the BDS. They are not for two states. They are not in favor of two states for two peoples. They are against the existence of the state of Israel. And when I meet international leaders, I said to them, listen, you are in favor of two states? Of course, they say. I say, okay, so how can you support BDS? The BDS is speaking about having all these millions of refugees coming to Israel. This is against the concept of two states for two peoples. And therefore, the problem is that because of our policy, there are others which are not part of the BDS movement who wants to criticize Israel. Trust me, Israel is strong enough to take criticism. We have good answers on most of the issues. But those who want to criticize Israel, and they are joining the BDS, and they are building a wall between Israel and the international community, and Israel is being more and more isolated. Now, instead of giving them the possibility to isolate us, let's isolate them. Let's build a wall between the BDS movement and all the anti-Semitic movements and the other part of the international community who wants to criticize Israel once in a while. It's okay. But in order to build this wall, we need to change the policy. We need to have a policy. And this is the reason for me to be in politics. I am concerned. I see this delegitimization of the state of Israel. I was speaking about a religious conflict and a national conflict. National conflict is solvable, religious conflict is not. And this national conflict between us and the Palestinians can turn into a religious in a moment. Har HaBayit, Haram HaSharif, Temple Mount. If this is going to be the focus, it's going to turn the conflict into a religious, not just between us and the Palestinians, but between us and the entire Muslim world. I am concerned because there is also an erosion of the understanding, not just outside of Israel, but also amongst the Jewish communities. I mean, the grandparents cried with joy when the State of Israel was established. I mean, really a miracle. Their children were concerned when Israel was attacked in Six-Day War, in Yom Kippur War. They were worried about the State of Israel. Their children sometimes asked them, what is Israel? Why should we defend Israel? Why should we stand in the campus and say that Israel is okay? Why you are speaking, dear parents or grandparents, about Israel as the David of the region, when we are looking at Israel, Israel is the Goliath of the region. So we need to have this direction and to explain to them, yes, Israel is the David of the region, because when we are looking at the region, we are looking from a bird's-eye point of view. The world is looking at the region from Google Earth point of view. And what they see is the Israeli soldier and the Palestinian child. So it's a reverse story of Goliath and David and Goliath. And therefore, there are things that we should do. But in order to make the right steps, we need leaders, less politicians, more leaders. And the difference between both is that leaders or statesmen are thinking about their grandparents, and politicians are thinking about tomorrow's headline. Now, with the internet, it's next minute headline. But I believe that without real decision making, we are going, hopefully not, but we can lose the state of Israel that we love so much. But just to finish with another story, more optimistic, you know that I worked with Arik Sharon as a prime minister. And he used to tell a story that I embraced and adapted. And this was about him and his mother that used to take him to the field. They were farmers. And he was a little boy, and she was an old lady, and they were working. And he was looking at the field, and he said, come on, there's a lots of work that need to be done. Let's rest a little bit. Let's stop now. And she used to say to him, no, don't look ahead. Look at what we achieved until now. So thinking about working in this field called Israel, looking back, we can really be proud. Looking forward, let's make the right decisions. Thank you.
Are you afraid that the changing demographics of Israel will affect the future success of your party, the Zionist Party?
Let's take some questions.
Okay. Some observers believe that the Olmert-Abbas negotiations of 2006-2008 came very close to success. What is your view of why these negotiations failed? What are the main differences on security policy between yourself and your party and the Prime Minister Netanyahu, if there are any differences? Security policies. I'm going to get in trouble if I don't read this question. It's a long one, so I'm going to read it. As Justice Minister, you must have given a good deal of thought to the problem of human shields. A shield being an implement of war. Those people are combatants either voluntarily or conscripted. I'm not responsible for the question, I'm just reading it. Conscription being compulsory turning of non-combatants into combatants. Okay, Israel currently refuses to see human shields as combatants. Yet in a potential war with Hezbollah, which may be devastating if that policy continues. Is this policy about to change? What is Israel's policy on the question of human shields? I mean, basically. All right. This is a semi-economic question. At what point does Israel's investments in Jewish settlements in the territories make a two-state solution impossible? you'd like to take these questions first? Okay.
I given answer to all the questions.
Okay. How will the growing strength of the Arab parties in the Knesset affect the future of Israeli politics? Can't quite make this. What advice would you give to NYU students interested in Israel's economy and culture, but who do not want to be targeted on campus? And is there a place for criticism of Israel from students who are pro-Israel? Why don't you address
Okay.
Start with these and I'll sort out the rest.
No, I don't know whether
We'll have time.
to the answers.
Okay.
Okay, I'll start with the last question. Of course there is a place for criticism. I mean, I'm an Israeli, I'm in the opposition, and I criticize my own government. It's okay. Criticism can come as long as we agree on the basis. As long as we agree, and the basic is, as I said before, Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. If it comes as a matter of policy of different governments, it's okay. I believe anyway that we should open a new dialogue between Israel and the world Jewry. I think that the old dialogue of you'll be here, we will be your self-shelter. When needed, you will come, advocate for us, donate to AIPAC, push the administration to do the right thing. I don't think that this is the right relations in a family. And we are a family. And I believe that the discussion should be really, what does it mean a Jewish state? And if the criticism is that Israel should be more open to different streams in Judaism, it's fine. By the way, I have the same criticism inside Israel. And maybe part of the criticism would be on me personally or my views or my policy, it's okay. As long as we understand that we are not losing, this base, and it's just criticism and not something that undermines the right of Israel to exist as a Jewish state. Now, I was asked about Arabs in the parliament and the demographic changes and how this would affect the Zionist Union. There are changes in Israel society. It's not just demographic changes. There are changes in views. When I was speaking about Europe, I'm speaking about America. This affects also Israel, to speak frankly. The conflict infiltrates into Israel, and I was speaking about changes. Hopefully not from a national conflict to a religious one. But what we see now that the conflict infiltrates into Israel and turned into hatred between Jews and Arabs inside Israel, between Israeli citizens, Jewish citizens, and Arab citizens. So this is something that we need to address, and part of the process, unfortunately, is that there are those delegitimizing positions that are accepting the rights of minority for equal rights. And therefore, yes, I am worried about these kind of changes that would put my positions in minority. For now, it's 50-50, but because of the coalition system in Israel, Netanyahu in the last elections succeeded in creating government with what he called his natural partners, which is right-wing, extreme right-wing, ultra-Orthodox. No, this is the government. It was facts, not criticism. Well, I criticize this as well. Now, talking about the difference on security between us and him, this is something that really frustrates me, because security is a matter of images. And people tend to trust, unfortunately, at men, big mistake, and not women. And those who speak in a more, strong manner not essentially there are those that are giving Israel more security. I was in the Israeli cabinet, and those generals and veterans that are coming from the army, their angle of security is very narrow. It's just about the army. When I speak about security, it's a broader angle. It's the army, it's the international community. The basics of Israel depend on, for its security, on several things. One is the army. The other is the relations with the U.S. An MOU was just signed, which gives Israel support on security, but this is not just this. Every military operation opens with a phone call to the United States for several reasons. One, the legitimacy of IDF, of our army, to act. We need space in time, and we don't want the Security Council to stop us. We need to know that if things deteriorate, we can get more support and supply from the United States. And this is part of deterrence. I want all these lunatics in the region to understand that it's not just small Israel, but this is a state that the United States is standing with her. And if you mess with Israel, you mess with the United States. This is part of security. Diplomacy is not a matter of, cocktails and suits. And Netanyahu is speaking about security, but acting in a manner that affects the relations between Israel and the U.S. Or take settlements. Settlement doesn't help to our security. It takes security. So if the concept is to send another family to live in an isolated place, it doesn't help Israel's security. It takes security. But Netanyahu, Mr. Security, is doing that. And therefore, there is no difference when it comes to the need to act against terror. There is no difference when it comes to the need to confront our enemies. But I believe that we should act on both sides of the equation. We have the moderates, and we have the pragmatics, and we have the Islamist terror. Hamas represents a religious conflict. They are not fighting for a state, and therefore I believe that we need to act against it with military force, but simultaneously to strengthen and to deal and to negotiate with the others. Netanyahu is doing exactly the opposite. He negotiated with Hamas after the operation in Gaza, and he is trying to undermine Abu Mazen. And I have criticism on Abu Mazen myself, but I would never negotiate with Hamas. Now, talking about the operation in Gaza and the question that I was asked about human shields, and it is true they are using Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Hamas is using civil population as human shields. By the way, in the last operation, we found in one of the pockets of one of the terrorists that we killed instructions: use the population. You know, the first night of the war in Lebanon, in July 12, 2006, we sat there and we understood and we knew that the missiles are in buildings that the families are living there. And we needed to decide, are we attacking these buildings or not? And we had a discussion with the Attorney General. And according to the international law, we said, okay, when they decided to sleep with missiles, they should understand that they wake up in the morning with an Israeli missile on their heads, because this changes the nature of the building from residence to military stuff. But you should know that each and every operation we are working, I was talking about values, but I'm talking also about the international law. And it's not easy. I wanted in the last operation, as a Minister of Justice, to attack the administration of Hamas in Gaza. It's a terrorist organization, why not? So I got explanation from here to eternity why we cannot according to the international law. Now, this is something that we cannot change. We are trying to avoid civil casualties, but unfortunately, while targeting the terrorists, there are civil casualties. There is one thing that I would never accept from the international community, and this is the comparison between terrorists and Israeli soldier, or a soldier. While the terrorists are looking for civilians to kill, the soldiers are looking for terrorists to kill. And there is no legal system in the world that compare somebody who killed somebody as a murderer to somebody who killed somebody in a car accident. I mean, for the families of the victims, it's the same, okay? But there is no comparison, no moral, nothing. And therefore, I would not ask the world to turn a blind eye to what Israel is doing, but I'm asking the world, demanding the world, to judge us in according to the same values. The same values and the same system and the same laws in which the international community in the free world is acting against terror all over the world. Does a continuous settlement activities change the idea of two states to something impossible? I don't believe in impossible, but it is clear that every day that passes by, it makes it more difficult. And therefore, I believe that we should stop settlement activity. I believe that freezing settlements serve the interest of Israel, especially those believing in two states. More than that, the leaders of the settlers, what they say is that while nothing is happening, we would continue to build until you reach the point of no return. So I believe that we should avoid it. Olmert Abu Mazen. You know, I watched Camp David 2000 with Ehud Barak, and I had criticism about the way Barak pushed Yasser Arafat. The old guys here can remember this, to the cabin. I said, well, this is this is the idea of Israel saying, oh, give me a Palestinian for 5 minutes and I will sign an agreement. Well, it doesn't work like this. The negotiations that I held with the Palestinians during Olmert's period, the idea was to have negotiations and to reach final status comprehensive agreement. And there are different core issues, so the idea was to negotiate simultaneously on all the core issues until we reach a point that there is trade-off within issues and trade-off between issues, and then we make the decision. Olmert decided to work on parameters. I don't know to tell you why it didn't succeed. I mean, I heard Abu Mazen why, I heard others. But also 2 years ago, we worked on a framework for negotiations with Secretary Kerry, and it was prepared, and Abu Mazen didn't give an answer, and I got from him other reasons or excuses. And though I believe that we need to learn from past experience, but it's not less important to understand that we shouldn't, if there are problems on the other side, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't put in our GPS the direction, the destination, and move forward as far as we can. I prefer to reach an agreement because the meaning is end of conflict. But if we cannot reach an agreement, so let's take the steps that we can take in order to keep the opportunity open, not reaching the point of no return, having the international community with us on this, and taking some steps forward as far as we can. As I said before, and I said it in the election, and I said it now, I'm not selling peace as an easy thing. I don't say that this is just around the corner, but I'm saying that this is an Israeli interest. I believe that this is also a Jewish value. And those who pray, they say, how many times a day, Oseh Shalom bimromav, Oseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael? Our Jewish prayer, you say, you pray for peace. So it's important to pray for peace, but it is not less important to work here to achieve peace. Thank you.